This segment is brought to you in part by the Canadian Historical Arms Society, owners of the Genesee Range, the premier recreational sport and training facility in Western Canada. See us online at historical-arms.com.
The Quiet Professional, a podcast about law enforcement, security, justice, and politics. We are digging deeper on the issues and going where the information takes us with access to experts and authorities. Welcome to The Quiet Professional. Hey everybody, welcome back. Nathan Romas with you. Today we are going to be talking about management, leadership, and the always fun topic of DEI. I know I can hear some eyeballs rolling already, but stick with me. It's going to be actually a really good conversation. We'll have some critical discussion in here. For that, I have Dr. Johanna Pagonis. Am I saying it right? You let me know.
Yes, Pagonis. Perfect.
Pagonis. Okay. She is the CEO and founder of Sinogap Solutions Leadership Consulting and author of the book, Choose to be a Leader Others Would Want to Follow. Dr. Pagonis has a PhD in adult education with a focus on uncovering how workplace managers can advance into emotionally intelligent leaders. And kind of near and dear to what I'm doing, you hosted a podcast called Tackle Tuesday. So welcome, Doctor. And we'll start talking about that.
Perfect. And just call me Joanna from now on. Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show, Nathan. I'm really excited.
Hey, I'm glad we could get you in here. And I was reading your book. Hey, kind enough to send it over. Appreciate that. It was really good. And I was writing tons of notes. Like it's very, well, I'll say it's short.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's 90 pages-ish.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it took me like 2 weeks because I was writing so much stuff down. So I really appreciated it. And a lot of the points in there really spoke to some of the stuff I've seen in our leadership programs here with the Edmonton Police. So, But just on the podcast real quick, Tackle Tuesday. So I saw that on the website, but it hasn't been updated in a while. So are you still doing it?
Oh yeah, we're recording the 5th season now. We wrapped up the 4th season, I think was it October?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's about anywhere between a 3 to a 6 month break sometimes. So we got super busy in the fall. We wanted to start recording in November, just too busy. But we started recording a couple of episodes. So our first episode should come out in March.
Okay, perfect. Whenever you do get those up, I'll keep an eye out. Send me a link. We'll help promote it. So yeah, let's just start by talking a bit about you and Sinogap, the company. As we were saying offline, I think some people might confuse that with like maybe you're involved with some foreign influence discussions or something. But how did this start? And what's the purpose of the company?
All right, great question. So Sinogap is my last name spelled backwards. So that's where the name came from. When I came up with the name, didn't realize the foreign influence in there. But I came up with that name because part of what we were trying to do was, I call it revolutionize workplaces, so that people can go in and like and love, dare we say, love what they do and appreciate the people that they work with and feel a sense of purpose and meaning. And sometimes it's hard to do because we go into work every day, the same routine, and we see the same thing. It's hard to see what we see every day in a different way. And I thought, what if I took my name and I switched the letters around? What would it sound like? What would I have? Mm-hmm. And realizing that's what we're trying to do with leaders and organizations is get them to look at their people, their systems, their processes, even the people and the clients and the communities they serve differently, to interrupt their unconscious bias that we all have and to reignite the passion within them. Okay. I think sometimes we forget about passion and we don't actually give enough credit or influence to it because it can be critical, especially when you're a leader and going through some really difficult times. You have to remind yourself, like, why am I here? What is it that I'm doing? What am I passionate about? Yeah. Right? I have a quote, and I think it's in my email signature, but I inherently believe the way to help and support people to guide them towards excellence is to ignite the passion within them, or something like that. It's more eloquent in my email signature, but why can't we ignite passion in people to help them renew their sense of purpose? And that way, I think people will reach and attain a level of excellence that we never even thought that they were capable of, or they themselves weren't capable of.
Yeah, definitely. It's hard to always be upbeat, on the go, and just keep given 100%. You definitely need reminders from time to time. I know in my work, even though I just got promoted, most of the stuff I was seeing was from like a senior constable level, so a senior member on a team. And it's more seeing the new people come in and how they're so energized with certain things. That kind of gets me going more. So I found that really helpful. You used to work for the provincial government, and in your bio, it says that you left a senior management position there to start your own
Yeah.
company. So what was that like? And why'd you decide the transition at that time?
Great question. Yeah, so I had always aspirations to have my own business. When I started working with the government of Alberta and I started going to more and more conferences and seeing keynotes and other consultants do work that I was doing within my organization, but it was really exciting the stuff that they were doing because, first of all, they didn't have the same bureaucratic processes they needed to go through. They could be more innovative and agile. They could guide and direct their own research projects, and they could work with a variety of companies and organizations across the province and beyond. And that I know that inspired me, and so I slowly worked towards that. I started consulting on the side as a part-time thing with permission. Obviously, you have to ask the government for permission if you're going to have another job, right? So
Yeah.
got permission from my boss to do it, which I was very grateful for. So I was always consulting a little bit on the side and got to work with some really cool other law enforcement agencies doing that, still with the aspiration to do this one day, like my own thing. And then I did my PhD for a couple of reasons, but one of them was I thought it would give me a lot more confidence and credibility to do my own thing as well.
Mhm.
The education, the learnings, the insight I would gain from my PhD research, I think was critical for me to be able to have my own business because really wanted to be research focused too. So once the PhD was in place, and then I switched over to another ministry. Here's the funny thing, Nathan. I still had aspirations of maybe moving up into an ADM and a DM position.
Okay.
So I almost had like two career pathways, one that I was really passionate about, and one that I felt like would be neat and interesting to do. But the higher up I went in the organization, well, I call it the Wizard of Oz phenomenon.
Okay.
So if you've ever seen the Wizard of Oz, right? They get to finally meet the Wizard of Oz, and they think he's this grand wizard, and realize it's just some dude behind a curtain, like
Yeah.
pulling the strings, right? And you're let down. You're so let down after you see what's behind the curtain. And I felt like that's what the experience was like for me moving up into higher levels of leadership within government. I got closer and closer to the curtain, and when I looked behind it, I realized my values, the way I wanted to do things, I couldn't stay there because you very much, the higher up you go, you have to put into action what the government wants you to do, what the political party that's in place at that time wants you to do. And sometimes they're not always open to advice or recommendations. And so I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to continue working for someone else, especially if I feel like it doesn't align with my values. I'll leave it at
Yeah.
that. And so then I thought, you know what? I did that for 2 years. It was an amazing experience where I worked at the last ministry I worked at. And I needed that experience because it really helped me figure out what I was going to do and the kind of solutions and services I was going to provide. So I left, and then the pandemic hit right after that.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
so that was tough. That was so hard.
Because you started Sinogap 2020.
Well, the fall of 2019, I was still working with the government. So I actually went to part-time hours. I had devised an exit strategy
Mhm.
with my employer to slowly, reduce my hours and then go. But, when you're a senior manager, there's no such thing as part-time work.
Yeah.
They started paying me part-time work, but I was still doing the same amount of hours. I'm like, this is dumb. And I go, I'm not there for my team the way I need to be. So I said, you got to make a decision. So I pulled the plug early in February 2020. I resigned officially and did it full time. And that was the other thing I realized. You can't launch a robust, successful business off the side of your desk. So I said, take a risk in yourself. Beyonce, I think she said this quote, like, I'm not a gambler. I'm not a gambling person, but if I'm ever going to place a bet, it's going to be on myself
Yeah.
or something like that. I'm like, so put a bet on yourself and trust yourself. So I did it. And you know what? It took off. I was like, oh my God, people were reaching out to me. So excited. Can you come do a proposal for us? I was like, I'm going to get busy here. And then the pandemic hit, and everybody ghosted me. And that was really scary because I didn't know how to position myself in terms of my value add during a time of global crisis.
Yeah, well, and that was one of the things I was going to ask is like, you're leaving a set position where it's
Oh
like,
yeah,
yeah, you got your salary
benefits.
and benefits and pension, everything
Oh
to
yeah,
go out on your own. And
nothing.
that's got to be scary. So,
Oh yeah, so that's scary in of itself, right?
mhm,
And I have a great husband partner who believed in me. I had a good financial nest egg that I had saved to help in case there was a financial crisis of some kind. Not knowing, and I feel foolish when I think about it because I'm like, how did you? I think I'm a lot better at reading the writing on the wall or trying to predict as best as you can. But at the end of the day, you never really can plan for these things,
yeah.
but you can learn how to be more optimistic and positive and more proactive with some better planning. But I was all by myself. I didn't know what I was doing, honestly. So it was, but wow, it was a great year hindsight because I built the business. I built the framework. I built the model. I built an online course catalog. I built leadership programs in anticipation of being able to customize them later on for specific clients. And then I started to just build relationships. I built the podcast. Like I did things, the newsletter. I did things that I may not have been able to do if I started out of the gate at full force, trying
Mhm.
to um, build clients and provide services and fulfill contractual obligations while also building the business would have been very hard. So
Yeah.
you gotta, not that I'm a Pollyanna of sorts, but you gotta see stoicism,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
couldn't control it, but what could I control? So that's what I did and built it.
Well, and you know what? A few of the points you're bringing up. So it's interesting how you're kind of talking about the education experience. So you're doing the PhD, and then you go and you have like the actual work experience, because that's a whole bunch of what you're going to talk about in your
Mhm.
book, and then what we're getting into today. So when we talk about, maybe we'll kind of switch gears to that, where we're talking about the management and leadership aspects. A lot of it has to do with translating skills from training to the real world application. When you say the PhD was useful for you or came in handy, can you kind of give us a sense of like why that is, and how much of that are you able to actually translate into doing the day-to-day job that you need to
Mhm.
do?
Thank you for that question. I have to start by saying, first of all, I'm not a university scholar. I guess when I was doing my PhD, I could say I was a scholar. I mean, but I'm more of a practitioner I am an academic scholar or an academic. I did my PhD like 11 years after I finished my master's. I did my master's at McGill, and I waited a long time. I wanted to go to work. I wanted to make some money. I wanted to gain experience. So I did the PhD because I realized I wanted to bring evidence-based practices to training and development in law enforcement.
Mm,
Typically, the way we design training is some dude, not no disrespect to the dude, but who has great experience. And I feel for this guy because and I say guy because most of the time it is a man, at least
mm,
back then when I was working in law enforcement as a civilian. Great at what you do as a frontline officer or whatever your area of specialty expertise has become and evolved over the years. They sit you in a chair, they give you access to a PowerPoint and like develop a program on this topic. And it's not evidence based because it's based on his experience. It's not grounded in other experiences. It's not grounded in best practices necessarily, except his best practices. Nor did this individual truly understand how human beings learn, process information, modify it, and then apply it, and the complex cognitive processes that go into doing that work. And so I thought I want to support law enforcement being more successful when they develop and design training that's people can will retain but also apply. And I think a PhD will give me more insight into how to do that.
okay.
So I went in as a practitioner wanting to learn how to better do the job and support the people that I was working with and collaborating with to develop and design training, but also field training as well, like that field training officer, PTO, police training officer program. So I went in it very much with that lens and that outcome. So everything that I did in terms of the research and the data I collected, all my participants came from law enforcement too, I should note, was all about like how are we going to design better workplace strategies to support managerial learning and development through everyday work, not just through training, but through everyday work. So it was so easy to then design recommendations and implement them in my own agency because I had that practical application in mind the whole way.
Mhm.
And I stood out differently from some of my other colleagues or classmates because many of the, like, when I read a lot of PhD peer reviewed articles, it's very theoretical. And I love theory,
Yeah.
but the people I work with don't necessarily. It's like it's boring to read. So,
Yeah, on that, I would say you always see like who mainstream media goes and consults with, and then you read some of the stuff, and you're like, yeah, you could, sure, that's your opinion, but if you put that into practice, like you're actually going to get people killed. So you can see through a lot of the theory, it doesn't apply in practice. It's like you're missing all this stuff. Like, you know, there is a time and place for the theorizing and then doing the pondering on things and philosophizing and then there's a time for action, and it's like, yeah, we can say all these things like A, B, and C, you should do them in these order, and this will work for these reasons. Like this would all, a lot of this I think is important for the discussions about de-escalation. And like there's de-escalation in an office setting, and then there's de-escalation on the street when someone's high, intoxicated, mental health. Like so it's like a vastly different experience. So yeah, I think you know what, it's nice to have, and but we also have to intake all those other experiences. Kind of like you're saying that there's a person who relies too heavily on the actual experience, has none of the background in the numbers or how the brain works or all these different things. It's like, well, okay, you have one piece of a puzzle, you're missing a whole bunch more.
mhm.
So yeah, I think you bring up a bunch of good points there. So when we're talking about one of the things I kind of want to ask about was on management and leadership. I've asked this question on here for some other people who are in the leadership realm. Do you think you can make a leader? Is it something that, maybe you're born with a few more of the characteristics that allow you to get there faster? Are there people out there that just absolutely are like, you will never be a leader in your life? You don't have it. So can you make them? Are they born? What's kind of your take on those things?
Yeah. That's the nature versus nurture debate that psychologists and theorists and scientists have argued for decades, I'd say centuries.
Yeah.
How much of it's nature, how much of it is nurture is what I'm hearing you say. So I guess I'm going to get a little theoretical here and academic. The philosophical paradigm I function from is called constructionism or constructivism,
Hmm.
um, which basically says we construct meaning of our lives based on the things that we experience and what's in our environment. I really do believe environment has a big role to play in terms of how you learn and how you show up every day. In terms of how you're raised, the workplace environment, that the different systems we live, work, and play within really have a huge influence on what we learn, how we process information, how we apply it, how we're supported to apply it or not apply it. What are the barriers and enablers that help us to succeed or to fail? And so, nature. I mean, yeah, there's definitely some research and science that shows that there are some inherent qualities that we're born with. There's even a lot of psychometric assessments that basically state that you're hardwired to do this, and so your hardwired nature is your default in terms of how you show up. But I'm like, okay, there may be some things that are hardwired in me, but I also have a lot of capacity to learn and grow and change. I have free will to do so. So when
Yeah.
it comes to being a leader, the danger in saying people are born to do it or have natural inherent qualities, characteristics to do it, is that it does exclude a big portion of the population that maybe were raised in a way that they were told you don't fit the positive, powerful archetype of what leaders need to be. And depending on the agency or the organization you work within, and I'll give the example of a male dominated one, women are not necessarily encouraged to see themselves as that leadership archetype
Mm.
and try to fit the mold of what it needs to be to try to succeed in that male dominated industry. So when we say nature and there's intrinsic natural characteristics, many people automatically shut down and say, then I'm not a leader. So that's why I say caution with the you're born to be a leader, because more often than not, people have the capacity and the development within them to do so. And I'm going to go right back to what I said at the beginning. I believe that there's so much potential within people, but when we don't challenge or interrupt our biases, to see people in a different way, we limit the potential and the growth within them. So
Yeah.
if we see that being a leader is something that can develop, that can grow with proper enabling structures within the workplace and that person's life, watch them achieve these heights that they didn't even know that they could achieve. And being a leader is there's the informal leader in terms of how you show up as a team member, but then there's the formal leadership aspect where you decide to put yourself out there, make a lot of sacrifices to lead an organization and make those decisions that are very hard to make sometimes. A lot of people choose not to be leaders because of that. So is that a natural inherent quality or characteristic that draws us to that risk that's associated? Maybe, probably on some level. Sure, there's so many scientific studies that could show that, but research has also shown us that we can develop that in people if
Hmm.
they want. That's the thing too. If they want,
Yeah.
do they? But a lot of people say, "I don't want even want to be that leader," because it goes back to they never believed they could because of what they were told. So once you start to have these conversations, like if I can see it, I can be it, then I may start to explore perhaps the potential within me to do it. And then I may start to develop the desire. And if the organization has these enabling factors to support me, I could probably succeed and be a leader, even though I may not have never initially thought that I could.
I like how you lay it out as kind of steps right there. I think that makes a lot of sense. I do really believe in the point you made about it being on the individual. I think a lot of it comes back to the individual. Like at the end of the day, you have to have the agency over yourself, over your life to make those decisions and want it for yourself. Because again, like anything in life, if you need to make a change, well, people can tell you to do it or they can send you somewhere to try and get you to do it. But if you just say no or you're lazy about it or you refuse to, well, then there's only so much other people are going to do, right? So you have to take control of that in your own life. So when it comes to this like developing side, how do you overcome something such as people not being, I don't know, permitted to, or maybe not being given the, what would you call it? Like, I guess the view that they could become a leader. How do you overcome
Mhm.
something like that?
So that's then we start to talk about, and what we have to start examining are the systems within organizations, the culture, right? So, what is the
Mm.
culture? What are those patterns of behavior that we see that indicate to us what the underlying values and belief systems are that influence how decisions are made? So, I'd say you got to start there first, because if the culture is restrictive, disempowering, doesn't give equal opportunity to people to succeed, then it's very hard for an individual to show up and be different if they've been labeled a certain way. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, and you know what? Using policing as an example, and even just going back 10 years, I've worked for two different organizations, and you can see different places where it's just the boys' club,
Mhm.
which doesn't do anybody any good. And I've seen the good that comes out of bringing in different thinking, people from different areas of expertise or education or whatever it might be, right? Like different life experience. So yeah, I get what you're saying on that.
Right. So we need to look at that and be like, we have this is where self-awareness at an organizational level is critical. So are we willing to look inward into what we do, say, and how we treat people, and go from there then to decide what's working and what's not, and who is it working for? Is it working for a certain population within the organization primarily? And if so, why, and how do we interrupt and change that to shift it towards it being more empowering to all, to others, so that we can create better pathways for people to succeed, even the ones that may not even necessarily see the capacity or capability within themselves. Listen, we hired them for a reason.
Hmm.
So let's not make that like hire smart people, make them dumb. Let's hire smart people and continue to invest in them, regardless of how they look like, where they're from. Um, and break down, like you said, like the old boys club. Because let's be honest, the old boys club isn't good for all the boys either. There's a lot of
Yeah.
men that feel very excluded from not being in the boys club, although they may look like the going back to the word archetype, they fit that perfect archetype of what belongs in that boys club, but for some reason they're not in.
Hmm.
They're not in the boys club. So it's problematic for anyone, including the white male who tends to dominate the leadership positions in the organization. So that kind of stuff needs to be looked at, examined, and opened up. But it takes the organizational leader at the top to do that. If there's no desire from the chief of police to do that, and it isn't going to happen, period. I've seen organizations that were pretty positive. They bring in a chief of police who, oh my God, in his previous position, women were fleeing like they were like in Pompeii and the volcano just exploded. That's how fast the women were exiting from the organization because of who this person is. And they leave that one organization, they go to another one and they destroy it. I've seen that happen. So it's really hard for people at a constable level, I'd say even at an inspector level, sometimes even at a deputy chief level, to make change. Because if that top leader has no self-awareness, is tyrannical in some nature, they're going to put themselves in an echo chamber. They're going to create the boys club of people who will echo anything and everything he says.
Yeah, I think you bring up a bunch of good points there. One I do kind of want to focus on because I probably gets left out the most is just all the white guys, because everybody kind of lumps them together. It's like, yeah, when you have the boys club, this is talking about like you're just bringing in your friends and you're like, that guy is highly unqualified to be in there. It's just because of who you knew. But a lot of guys get left out and it's like you could be overqualified for a position. So yeah, I think everybody experiences these issues to a different degree.
Yeah.
But it's very rare, maybe 1% of the population or something that doesn't experience this in some form, some way. So it's when we have those conversations, like we certain kind of just white guys get lumped in as a group. It's like, yeah, even within that, they have their own experiences and different things that they get left out for. So when we're talking about this too, and the development of the leadership, I just kind of want to go back a bit to the classroom versus the workplace experiential learning. So what are you doing with like Sinogap? And then what are you seeing in other places or what other people in this leadership realm are doing to kind of break some of the mold, to make some changes?
Right. When I started the company, I was like, so one of the reasons why I convinced myself that if I did this, I would succeed.
Yeah.
It's right.
You got to go in with a good attitude.
Right. It's because ultimately I saw a gap, and I'm just bringing, because I have some notes here that I want to make sure that because this is a topic that's passionate to me and speaks to my heart. It's one of the reasons why I started the company. So when we would hire other consultants to support us in designing and implementing all the training that needs to happen, I had a very lean team. So I was in charge of training and development for a mega ministry that had 7,000 people. So you can imagine, at one point I had like 3 people in my team, including me.
Oh, wow.
So that's a very lean team. I don't know. We were pretty exceptional. I had an amazing team and we did really, really well. But sometimes, yes, we had to go to consultants to support us because we didn't honestly have the capacity to do everything. I would get so frustrated because I had to redesign everything they did for us. They didn't want to partner with us. They kind of wanted to go in and design what they wanted to do in their ivory tower. There was limited conversations with us because everything's billable, and you're trying to stay within a budget when you're in the government. It wasn't anchored to our business outcomes. It didn't include opportunities for people to really process and absorb the content in a way that they could then retrieve easily and apply. It was kind of like one-shot deal. You come in, you get a bucket load, a shitload of training that your poor little brain can't retain everything, nor does it know how to apply it because the examples that are given are not relevant or meaningful in any way.
So no matter what you were going to say to them, they had their cookie cutter kind of like, we're going to end up telling you this regardless of what our consults say.
Yeah. And they would say, like, we customized it for you. Not really, because I just found out that you did the same thing for health services. And their program looks exactly identical to ours. Fine. Leadership is leadership, but there are nuances from health services to being a nurse and a doctor or, even a peace officer in a healthcare institution versus being an officer or a sergeant in a small municipal district. Like, I'm like, there are nuances that are different. And don't tell me that the case studies are relevant to both. They're not. It's harder for me. Like I mentioned, these cognitive complex processes our brains have to go through to absorb information, modify it to accommodate what we already know, and then slowly try to apply it. The the more that the training is designed with my workplace context in mind, the less my brain has to do
Okay.
to retain, process, and apply. They were not doing any of that. I actually said to one consultant, where's the transfer of learning? He goes, that's not my problem. That's yours. Like, guess what? It's your problem because we're not hiring you. I said, no, 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 no. It was like a multi-agency partnership. I'm like, we're out. I'm like, I'm not spending a dime on that. Sorry. So we hired people. I convinced my boss, let's build a better team of people we can train and develop to design our own training because this sucks. So when I left, I was like, what if I could do that as a consultant for people? My business model is different. It's not on billable hours. It's based on deliverables.
Mhm.
And so obviously we count the hours of work that go into it, but I don't nickel and dime, you know? It's more about the relationship that we build. So we call it getting into the trenches with them. We're not the parachute in. We're going to, the allies are
Yep.
parachuting in to save you from your enemies. And then we're going to jet out on the next jet as fast as possible because billable hours, man, billable hours, right? So for us, it was like get in the trenches, get dirty with our clients in terms of the problems and the challenges they're experiencing. People start to see us friends and true partners, not the consultant, and then co-create solutions and training materials with
Mhm.
them. And then do a very robust evaluation to determine how is it going, how is it being applied, so we can make it better the next time we do it. So it's always aligned to their business outcomes. Like, what is the end goal of this? Why are you developing these individuals? We then
Okay.
encourage them to share those outcomes with all the participants so they know why I'm not in my office answering all the emails that I have to answer. Why am I sitting in this bullshit leadership course? So the outcomes are explicitly stated. The top leader supports this, empowers them to do it, encourages them to. When the chief says, you have to do this because this is important. We care about you, your development. The better leader you are, the easier your job will be, the more effective your team will be. Trust me. I know. I support you. I trust these training professionals that have come and work with them. People buy into the whole leadership experience very differently. That's the other thing too. A lot of people are prisoners in their
Mm.
own leadership development because to them the control tactics and the firearms training is more important than understanding how to deal with the most hardest interpersonal conflict you'll ever have to deal with in your life as a leader. I've heard someone say I can deal with inmates 24/7, the most dangerous inmates, but as soon as Bob tells me he can't work with Sam,
Yeah.
I'm broken. I don't know what to do.
Well, in that, that actually plays into even just where people have the most frustrations and issues, or why people go off work. From what I've seen and my experiences, it is far more the internal stuff than the external. Like, I can deal with the bad guys all day. I don't care what they call me. They pull weapons, like all that stuff. You're like, well, that's what I signed up for. I kind of expect that from them. Not that it's good, but that's expected, right? We know where we stand. These are the lines. Then when someone on the inside of the organization is a problem, starts putting in complaints about you, or you can't see eye to eye, or people start talking behind your back, kind of thing. That's like the ultimate betrayal. And then you start, it's like a conflict that is almost unsolvable in a lot of ways because people are so afraid of confrontation. They don't want to sit down and talk anything out. There's a lot of leadership that has to come into that. I think it is, again, it comes back to the individuals. They need to be adults about it, leaders about it, and be able to solve these problems. But a lot of people can't. They haven't
Right.
developed that. So yeah, it's a hard world.
I'll add to that. Let's go back to the nature versus nurture conversation. Are you born to be a leader? Can you learn to be one?
Mhm.
I don't care how many people told you you are a born leader. When you have to have your first, even your fifth difficult conversation, it's absolutely terrifying. It really is because there is real risk in getting a bullying and harassment complaint, if you
Yeah.
don't know how to do it well. These are things you have to learn. You
Yeah.
have to learn how to do them. So I've worked with executives who have never had leadership training and destroy people's souls in a difficult conversation, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And I don't care if how many people told me he was born to be a leader. He really sucks at it because unfortunately, he never got any training or development. And although I'm criticizing him and whoever this fictional leader is, who we've all had in our lives, I do feel for him and have empathy for him or her because what can we expect from them?
Yeah. Do you see a difference between men and women when it comes to those leaderships positions? Like in all your experience of doing these plans, do you find one can be more of a tyrant than the other, or is like, everybody's just got kind of their shitty people, no
Yeah.
matter who it is?
Yeah. It depends. I mean, I've worked with male and female leaders, and many of them, more than not, have been amazing. With that said, even some of the leaders who I considered mentors had their faults, and some of them were pretty bad. And they were both men and both women. So
Mhm.
it goes to show you that gender does play a part, but I'll say when it comes to, once again, the nature part of the conversation, women are not necessarily better leaders than men, or men are not necessarily better leaders than women. Although there's so much research that says we have an unconscious bias that we do believe men are better leaders.
Mm.
But the science shows us that's not necessarily true. So the experiences that we have as we ascend into higher levels of leadership, in terms of access to formal training, the mentors that we have, who we've observed, who we've experienced as leaders, and how we're encouraged to show up and lead in a way that feels true to us, really influences how somebody leads. And so if I'm trying to lead in a way that feels more authentic to me, my value base system is make a positive difference in people's lives. And my superpower to do that is building relationships at like record speed, in record speed. Like I
Yeah.
can build, sometimes I want to go on Survivor or The Trader and see, like, am I going to be that person that can just like instantly build these crazy trusting relationships with everyone that it gets me right to the end and wins?
You don't have to
I
do
think
anything, and everyone's like, I still like them. I just can't
I
kick
still
them
like
off.
them. I can't, like, right? That's me. So I like building relationships with people. But if I'm trying to do that and someone's telling me you got to be, and I've had this happen to me, a fellow leader who had so much less experience than me and was acting said, I need to talk to you in my office, Joanna. So I go sit in his office. What's going on? And he's like, my staff, I was having problems with one of your staff. So I'm going to
Mhm.
tell you what the problem is. And then proceeded to tell me how to lead her, how to lead
Oh,
my staff
okay.
member. And the issues between her and the other staff was, some of it was her, yes. But a lot of it was them too. And there was like misunderstandings and lack of empathy going both ways. Okay. But he was basically telling me what I needed to do to lead her and manage her in the way he leads and manages team, which wasn't true to me. And
Mhm.
so if you get easily influenced by that kind of stuff as a woman, when you look around, you're the only woman there and you see everyone else leading, like this guy sitting across the desk from me is telling me how to lead. If I'm inexperienced, I don't have a lot of confidence because I'm new, I may default and be like, you're right. Actually, I'm going to be totally honest, Nathan. I actually walked out of that office and I was like, yeah, he's right. I'm like, what the fuck? No,
Yeah.
he's not. He's not right. What the fuck happened in that conversation? Why did I default to him? That's not right what he said. I'm going to deal with it in the way that I need to deal with it. So even I, although I was experienced and very confident, I was sitting across from him. I was like, yeah, educate me, Grand Poobah. Tell me what to do. And I was like, no. So you see, women sometimes face a different challenge, but I'm going to be
Mhm.
honest with you. Men do too, because sometimes a guy doesn't want to lead in that very authoritative, not totalitarian way, but kind of like a very command and control way. Sometimes
It's
they
the
don't, yeah,
authoritarian. Yeah,
they
you're using the position and the rank.
don't want to lead in that way. But sometimes they're more encouraged to do so and rewarded to do so. So even they at times don't necessarily lead in a way that feels truer to them.
You know what that makes me think of is basically, no matter who the person is, whether it's guys or girls, but it's if someone tells you to lead a certain way, a lot of the things that it's missing are who you are, like how you've portrayed yourself to your staff and how consistent you've been throughout that. And like if you're normally just everybody's friend and people just like you, regardless of your skill or anything, and then you try to walk into a room and just boss people around, or you say, this is how it's going to be. I'm this rank, you're that rank. Do what I told you. People are just going to look at you like, what the hell? Like, it doesn't make sense. It can't compute. So, yeah, I think a lot of it is maybe it's just more, we kind of leave out all that environment, how you're raised in the working world and like your experiences and all that stuff. That all just gets left behind if someone's just like, well, you have to do it this way. It's like, well, that's not me, and I've never portrayed myself as that kind of person. So yeah, it misses out all that. And again, these are conversations I've had a bunch of times with anybody that's been on a team that I've been on. They'll probably recognize some of this stuff, but it's talking a lot about being consistent and reliable as a boss because
Yeah.
you're portraying a certain image. So when it comes to those difficult conversations, if you've been a certain way for, X amount of time, months or years, and people kind of know you a certain way, like I'm known as being very blunt and straightforward, but I'm not doing it in an asshole way. It's just like, hey, here's the issue. Now let's work on the issue. Like, just get to the point, right? And I've never had a complaint from that. And I've had difficult conversations with a lot of people about a lot of different things, both up the chain of command and not down because I was a constable, but people just more junior than me. And it's like, I don't know, at the end of the day, we're still friends and we can still work together and there's no issues there. But it's like, hey, we got this point across and we're going to work on it and figure it out together. So yeah, I think a lot of stuff gets lost when someone just tries to impose their will on you, right?
Very true.
So maybe we'll switch a bit here just to the DEI side of things because I really want to get your opinions on these things. We've talked a lot about men and women, so we're kind of been dabbling in it anyways. The biggest thing, and I've seen this recently with some processes at work, is when we're trying to get people into a position of leadership or even management, but if we want to grow people as leaders, I think a lot of the conversation around all this DEI has completely been hijacked. That's just my opinion. There was actually a good post online. I tagged you in it, I'm pretty sure.
I know. I read it.
Yeah, by Sergeant Westman from the EPS. And it actually, I thought it was thoughtful. I thought it made a lot of sense. And then I put my comments on it. And you see, and when you look at the comments, like just the variation in there is like, clearly everybody's had a very different experience with this and seen it from very different sides and very different worlds. But I think a lot of the conversation, like it's been hijacked. I think it started as maybe some novel idea, something that was well intended, and it's been taken way out of context. And when we get to things like promotions, hiring, even when you look at academia and like who's getting certain positions in there. When we talk about GPAs, there's lots of examples of, hey, if you're this group or this ethnicity, you still need a 4.0, but these ones, they need like a 2.5 GPA. You're like, that doesn't sound good. So what are your kind of takes, just DEI overall, kind of where it sits in society right now? And then we'll kind of get into how maybe it comes into play in some of the stuff that you're doing.
Where does it sit right now? In a very uncomfortable seat.
Yeah.
If DEI was a human being, they wouldn't be feeling very confident or comfortable right now, I would say. And maybe it was time that this would happen, or it was inevitable would happen. I mean, let's look at what happened since the pandemic. I think because like what happened there? Like I'm actually even. I know you're supposed to ask me the questions, but what are your thoughts on like what do you think? Like what was the genesis of this shift in DEI? Because I feel like it shifted. And it happened during the pandemic.
I think it goes back before that.
Okay.
I want to say there was some stuff like, was it 2013, 2017? You start to see language slowly change. You start to see certain ideas coming out of academia. A lot of stuff kind of originates in those, they're like the thought centers, right? So a lot of stuff starts coming out of there. And then we see shifts as it goes on. So I think these conversations have been going on a long time. The debates have been going on a long time, but like a major effort started happening somewhere late 20 teens, early 2020s.
Yeah. I as a consultant, right? So a pandemic happened, George Floyd was murdered, and things shifted drastically in the States. And what happens in the States obviously impacts us, as we're seeing now with the tariff and the looming tariff wars and all of that. We're very close to the States, and their policies and practices and realities that they experience influence us. And that what happened in the South, in the States, it impacted us greatly. So we started to see shifts in terms of how we approached EDI. So equity, diversity, inclusion, or diversity, equity, inclusion. Some people
Mm.
include the B, which is belonging in there.
I've never even heard that. That's new.
Oh no, yeah, belong. Some people choose belong, some people don't. Some people say inclusion is, I'm going to give you a seat at the table. Belonging is what I'm going to give you the ability to speak and voice what you want, and what you have to say matters, and you belong here.
One other one I have seen is it's DEI AR. So DEI and anti-racism.
Oh, okay. I mean, you could have the full alphabet in there. Like we've seen that happen in other things too, right? Yeah. So I'll give you my perspective. Like when I started the business, and then that happened, and and I wrote this in the newsletter that I posted this week. I said some of my other fellow consultants said, you got to change your business model. You got to be DEI focused. Your services need to be specific to DEI. You need to change your website. You need to look like you're a DEI expert. The thing was, I never considered myself a DEI expert. And then I started to consider it, and I'm like, yeah, I am. Obviously, I'm a training professional. The way we design and develop workplace learning strategies and formal classroom training is always through the lens of like creating a place where everyone feels like they're included, they're there, they need to learn. We're using language, and we're using different mechanisms to make everyone feel like wherever they're at in terms of their learning abilities, they can learn, they can get something out of it, they belong there, they matter, and they're going to be able to apply the things that they learn. So at the heart of the way we always did things was with diversity, inclusion, belonging in mind. And in terms of equity, it was all about making sure that people had access to the training, that regardless of who you were, where you worked, what position or rank you were in, that depending on the type of training, obviously there are some prerequisites that you need to have. But ultimately, we wanted to remove barriers for people to access learning and development so they could succeed. So I realized that is what my business is built on in terms of how we offer services and how we develop relationships with our clients and what our values are based on. I'm not changing my website. I'm not going to slap EDI language all over my website, in my materials, promotional training. I'm not going to be something. I don't think that's an authentic approach.
Yeah.
Dealing and addressing with the challenges that are very real for many of us. I started we're going to talk about this a bit later, but I started a program called Women Up, Ignite the Leader in You to support women succeed and address the leadership gender gap that exists. Because I had experienced that. So I knew that it's a very real thing. But that's how I wanted to deal with it. I wanted to take a very strength-based approach to supporting women. I wanted to include supervisors and male allies in these learning experiences because they matter and they belong and they should be there too. I wanted to develop training for leadership training that was also inclusive in terms of the language that we use. I wanted to make sure that when I was working with our clients that we didn't come in acting like we were the experts and we knew everything. Like my husband calls it the red pen phenomenon. When we're going to come in with my red pen, tell you everything you're doing is wrong, and we're the expert. Like that was never my approach. So when I started to look at my business model and our approach, our values, how we develop relationships with our clients, I realized at the heart of what we do is diversity. It considers inclusion, belonging, equitable and fair practices around training and development. So I stuck to that, and I'm happy that I did. Because now I'd be feverishly wanting to maybe, I don't know, rejig everything because of the backlash that it's getting. Any case, I just wanted to stick to a process that was true and authentic to me, that I knew was long lasting and outcomes based.
I really like the thought about the authenticity part. And the reason I would kind of key in on that is because I think when you see a lot of these big companies now, we've seen and the U of A here in Edmonton, but we've seen, I think it was Microsoft. There's been a few other big ones. They're all just firing their DEI departments and getting rid of all these people. And to me, and obviously I'm not on the inside of these conversations, but it's like, wow, they only had those departments for like 4 or 5 years and there's a lot of questions around the people that used to run those places about plagiarism and their resumes and different things. And it's like, to me, the fact that they can just can you the next second once it's not fashionable to have this on their company, like somewhere in the company and stuff. To me, that's inauthentic. And I think the biggest thing that I don't like about that is that people are being used and they don't seem to see that, or they're fine with it. And I think that's another problem altogether, where you're okay with just being the token thing or being brought into the room just so that someone could say, hey, look, I brought one of these people along. Like, that is like one of the most degrading things you can do to somebody. And out of the conversation, so I'll go around and kind of pick these conversations with people. And a lot of the different like minorities that I've talked to, their experience has been just that. It's like, well, they asked me to be in this group and they said we're going to have all this conversation, or they wanted me to join this one panel thing. But then when I got there, they never asked me a question. They didn't say anything. Like, they basically introduced me, said, hey, look, I brought, this color or this race or this gender into the room. And, yay, me. And it's like, what am I here for? Just to go on your resume to say that you created some opportunity for me. And I think a lot of the conversation gets lost around that. So I really think it's just maybe my experience with it, and from what I've seen, is that it's been used inappropriately in a lot of cases. A lot of the language for me too, like when I hear certain things, it's like I find it kind of cringeworthy. I'm like, I just don't like when people say these things. I like what you're saying, where it's the authenticity. I just do this because this is what I believe in. I don't have to parade it around. I don't have to like change my whole life for it. I don't have to put this on my social media or do that. It's like, we already do that. And that's where and maybe I'm taking a little bit of airtime here, sorry. I feel like this is where society was already going. Like, even just growing up, and I look at my wedding party and stuff, like, it was super multicultural, super diverse. Nobody gave two shits what anybody was. I just go hang out with my friends. Like, that's how I grew up, through the 90s, through 2000s. And I see a lot of people that are like out there taking the knee, apologizing for everything. I'm like, you're from a different generation where, you shouldn't be apologizing for me because I didn't do any of whatever you did. So like, go do it yourself. But I think people also don't want to take the individual responsibility. I think they try to lump everyone in as a group so they can avoid the spotlight or having to say sorry for real. Sorry, that's a whole lot of stuff. But there's so much on this topic. I could go on forever. But I think the authenticity part is just lacking in so much of where it went off to. So, yeah.
I mean, what makes it more authentic is, like, I say this to anytime we work with a client and they want to do something, like, what's the outcome you're seeking? Number one, like, why? What's the why behind it?
Mm-hmm.
How will this improve the organization, the culture? How will it improve how people work? Ultimately, how will it improve the services that you offer to clients and your community? Like, what's the why behind it? Don't just start an initiative because everyone else says you need to do it.
Yeah.
And that's where the lack of authenticity comes. And what ends up happening is, if you don't know the purpose behind it, if it's not linked to a business outcome, it's not integrated well into the system of the organization, you end up hiring someone, putting them in a position without necessarily the resources and the supports that they need, or their permission. Because that's the thing. Sometimes we hire someone to sit in a position. We don't tell the rest of the organization necessarily why they're there, the purpose behind it. We may send out an email. This person was just hired to do this position, and that's it. But some people don't even read their emails, or they don't really understand the long game in it. And then,
so it's left open for interpretation.
It's sometimes those individuals that were put into EDI positions, and they were very qualified and had tons of experience. And if you were going to put anybody in that position, it was that person. but they weren't even told what the outcome was. They weren't given metrics. They weren't given anything. Clarity in roles and responsibilities, expectations was like, figure it out.
Mhm.
What? How do you do that? Do you think that person was going to succeed? So when things, you know, take a turn and that the person has been struggling to demonstrate value and worth of these initiatives without really true support from the top, it makes it easier for these companies then to fire them too. And when I was like going back to, like you said, these companies who fired all these people, it's like, do you not give a shit about your people? You
Yeah.
hired them. There was no authenticity there in hiring them. You obviously didn't really care about them. You didn't care about what they were doing and how they were supposed to improve the lives of other people. You didn't give a shit. You did it because it looked good and you didn't want to look like the company that was being bad
Yeah.
ultimately.
100%.
So all those poor people, and here's the thing too, some of those individuals who were not high, like totally merit based. I like what that guy said in LinkedIn. DEI at its core is about trying to interrupt unconscious bias, which is very, very hard to do, and get individuals to be more empathetic. And they say empathy is, and I love this. I read this and I love it. And I say it all the time. When you're truly being empathetic, my colleague sitting next to me, she's probably sick of hearing me say it. Just give me a thumbs up. But empathy is when you try to understand someone's experience through their frame of reference,
Mhm.
not your own. Your frame of reference, if you will, is a frame. Imagine a picture frame, and in it are your experiences, the good, the bad, the ugly, your value system, your biases, unconscious and conscious, well known and unknown, your way of being. All of that is in there and influences the way you see the world and the way you categorize things. To be truly empathetic, it's easy when you meet someone who has a very similar frame of reference to you. It's
Yeah.
so easy to be empathetic. But when you meet someone who's very different than you, challenges your frame of reference, what you always thought to be true, it's very hard to be empathetic with those individuals. So that's why unconscious bias exists and flourishes sometimes, because individuals are not willing to develop the self awareness that it takes to say, maybe I have a mindset and a belief that restricts other people's opportunities and actually really puts them in a box that
Mhm.
limits their potential. You know how painful that is to admit that to yourself? It's not an easy thing to do, but we can and have the capacity to do it. And I think that's why it's hard.
It's not like it's people have to go out and say this to the world. You can change it on the inside, right? Like you don't have to go out and feel like I'm going to be some bad person or people are going to make fun of me. It's like, no, it's just change your attitude and change some of your
Yeah.
practice.
And have the courage to do that. So that takes courage. And I don't think we give that enough credit. When we say to someone, what you just said was racist, you fucking idiot. Like, you, what was your intention behind that? Because I've had bullshit, stupid statements have come out of my mouth that were sexist and misogynistic and yes, racist. But you know how I learned to shift and change? When there was someone, I've had this experience, someone absolutely fucking ridiculed me and embarrassed me in front of all these people. They may have had an initial gut emotional reaction to what I said, and that's the way they acted. It was bad what I said, and I'm not going to hold it against them. But let me tell you, I didn't walk away feeling like I wanted to change from that experience. And then
Mhm.
I've said other things too. Once again, like, I'm a human being. I've said these things. And then I've had other people who are like, I'm going to take this opportunity to give you a different perspective. Are you open to that? Yes, I am open to that. And they explain their different perspective. They were empathetic to me. Being empathetic doesn't mean they don't hold me accountable for the crap that just came out of my mouth. They're empathetic to say, maybe she, based on her life experience, is saying these things and doesn't truly understand the potential negative impact it has. So I'm
Mhm.
going to ask her if she's open to hearing what I have to say. Maybe there's an opportunity for some understanding. That had the biggest positive impact on me, where I changed my behaviors and my mindset. And I was more willing to be honest that what I said was absolutely wrong and disempowering. Took some time to get there, but I
Mhm.
was more willing to explore that and walk that journey because that person was patient, empathetic with me, not the one who ridiculed me, embarrassed me. That I still remember. I remember those. I'm thinking of two examples in my life that I experienced around that. I'll never forget them. Both were critical for me to experience because now the next time that I come across someone who says things like that, I take a deep breath. I try to understand where they're coming from and why they said that and go from there. And the conversation is always better.
Well, that's the emotional intelligence part, self-awareness, all those things, right? Like, okay, I see something bad or something I don't agree with. Well, don't emulate that then, right? But you used to see a lot of management where people would just pick up on something. It's like, well, that's just the way we always do it, so I'm just going to do that. Like, no, you can be the thought changer, make things different. I do want to say on that too. I think something that doesn't get really talked about is how that needs to go both ways. So and I get there's like, if it's something where we're hiring a person or promoting, there is a power dynamic there. But it even in those instances, but even if it's like peer to peer levels, people have to have a frame of reference for both directions. It's not just I'm the sad one, therefore everybody has to do what I say. And that could be a whole nother conversation for another podcast because we'll get way over time. But the whole victimhood mentality, like we've totally gone way out on that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just want people to realize like it needs to be a frame of reference that you have. Both of you need to do it. Both people need to be leaders and adults about whatever their situation is. We are coming up just to the end of our time.
Yes.
I feel like I haven't even scratched the surface on a lot of things I wanted to get to. So we'll have to do like a part 2 and 3 or something.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure just at the end here, give you a few minutes to just talk about some of the projects you have coming up.
Thank you.
So anything on the horizon? Obviously, we talked about the podcast. You're going to be firing that back up. And season 5, it was, you said?
Yes. Yeah.
And what else do you got kind of going on? Who are you working with, if you can say?
Yeah, thank you for giving me the time to say that. Yeah, so first the podcast, Tackle Tuesday, called Tackle Tuesday because we tackle organizational issues that we have and experience today. That one's going to be, so season 4 was on change management. Season 3 was on psychological safety. Season 5, though, we're dedicating it to women at work and women in leadership. Our goal is to eventually do a research study to take a look at opportunities and challenges women experience so that we can come up with practical strategies that organizational leaders can apply with support, right? So that's really what I want to do. I think having women in the workplace can make our workplaces better, but let's figure out a better way of doing that. So that's what season 5 is going to be dedicated to. The other thing that we're doing in line with that is, like I mentioned, we have Women Up, Ignite the Leader in You. Cohort 7 starts March 18th. It's for emerging leaders and formal leaders, but really like early career leaders. Ideally, that's the target audience, that they want to be in a community with other women so that they can tackle the challenges that they experience day to day in a very supportive environment. So although we do leadership, we do talk a lot about confidence. We talk a lot about self-awareness. We talk about strengths and superpowers. So it's a very strength-based approach to developing your leadership abilities.
Can I ask real quick on that? I saw the dates on the website for that, and it was like March to May. So is it a bunch of sessions or just?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all virtual. So it's self-paced online courses blended with virtual instructor-led workshops. And so it's like usually every week or every second week, there's a 3-hour virtual workshop. And so the time commitment's about 3 hours, and the program itself runs from March 18th and wraps up May 5th. And there's some breaks in between because there is some assignments that participants have to do. We don't schedule virtual workshops to give them the time to do that. Women juggle many, many things. We don't want this learning experience to be like, I don't have the time. A lot of women say, I've just been promoted, I'm busy, I don't have the time. But the women who have said, I'm going to do it and I'm going to invest in myself, realized actually doing this course gave me the energy that I needed to get through some of the craziness that I'm dealing at work, considering that I'm isolated and I'm the only one who sits at that top leadership position. I look around the room, I don't know who I can talk to. I look forward to the weekly 3-hour or bi-weekly 3-hour workshops because then I can come in a safe space with women who don't necessarily know me or neutral parties, if you will, and then we can talk about these things. So that's what the course offers to women. So it's modular based to give women the time to process what they've learned and apply it.
Okay.
So there is an opportunity for them to come up with a goal that they want to achieve through this program and beyond. So there's that. And then the last thing we're going to do, shout out, is we have a course called Creating Brave Spaces. So it's a leadership program done in a very different way. We've done it virtually, but we're launching the in-person program through Grant McEwen University here in the city of Edmonton.
Okay.
So we're going to do our first in-person offering. They're going to be promoting it. So I'm going to be posting it on our website and our newsletter and social media. So just follow me on LinkedIn, Johanna Pagonis, to learn more. And you can send me a message if you want to learn more about that. But we're going to be doing that. It's going to start in May. I forgot the dates exactly, but that's like a multi-week program too. Because you come in for a full day. And I think there's like maybe 3 or 4 full days that they would do. And it's different because it's some online self-paced courses, and some peer coaching circles. So not just workshops, but peer coaching to learn the art of coaching. So that's the third thing that we're doing that we're really excited about this year.
Very cool. Yeah, in the episode description, when I get this up, I will put up any links that you need. I'll attach all the social media as well. There was the early bird discount for
for Women Up
conference. Yeah. So
for Women Up, March 7th is the deadline to sign up. You get 15% off.
Okay.
Women, I forgot what the code is, but it's on the website.
Okay. Yeah, I saw it there today. So we'll put that up as well. Yeah, no, I think this is awesome conversation. A much needed conversation, especially given today's social media post.
Yeah.
So good timing by Jeff.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you for being on the show today. And just hang on for 2 seconds. We'll chat offline.
Thank you.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening in and following along with the discussions. Be sure to click the follow or subscribe button on your respective listening platform. Also, check out the Quiet Professional on X and Instagram under TQP780. And most importantly, please share where you can. Everyone has a part to play in getting these education and information pieces out there, so pass it along. Thanks again.